it's me Vinny and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for tuning in for my new video. I just want to talk about just a follow-up from my last video around the dawn raids, because I've been asked a couple of times from people who've viewed the video and just more about the dawn raids, and I thought I'll just share a bit later, a little bit today, a really brief overview of what the dawn raids were, just so we're educating, because education is liberation. So yeah, I thought I'll just share a little bit of what I know. I may not get it right, and if I don't, I apologize in advance, but I am going to try my best to give a good overview of what the dawn raids are, and just to provide some education around a part of New Zealand's history. So yeah, let's get into it. So before we start talking about the dawn raids, if we go back a little bit and just figure out, talk a little bit, just a little bit context to how Pacific Islanders came to New Zealand as well. So in the early 1970s, there was a labour shortage, and Pacific Islanders were encouraged to come to New Zealand, and they were drawn in with the beauty, or with the facade of why New Zealand is a land of milk and honey, and to come and fill the gaps in the labour shortages. And Pacific Islanders saw that as an opportunity for themselves to be able to build a better life, in terms of education, a better quality of life, and for their children, for their offsprings, for the future generations. And it's for Pacific Islanders, not just about getting a better job by the end of it, and that's why you invest in education, but for them as well, there were cultural significance around this, around being a good a son, being a better parent, being a better family member, and upholding and being able to take care of your family. So they came in the hopes of, with the land of milk and honey was a significant phrase, I think, that was used at that time, but obviously this changed. So this changed because there was a economic downturn, and now the Pacific Islanders were no longer wanted, so they were seen as those who were taking away jobs and who were just who were overstayers. So they were starting to be portrayed in the media as bad people, as people who were taking away jobs, as people who did not need to stay here, and who were overstayers, who were illegally staying in New Zealand. And there was a lot of, I think, this is where we can see like the milk and honey turned sour, because a lot this whole first off encouraging them to come to New Zealand to work to fill the labour shortages, but then now with the economic downturn, they were then being viewed as the negative ones, as the ones who were stealing jobs, and a lot of tactics were used. Racism, racist attitudes, scaremongering. So it was already started. There was already a lot of efforts to try and drive the Pacific Islanders out of New Zealand, and unfortunately, one of the big ones as well that was used by the government was the dawn raids. They were trying to catch illegal immigrants, and so the dawn raids happened in the dawn hours of the morning, and they broke into homes. There was brutal force that were used. Families were separated. There was no humanity. There was a lot of force and pressure, and families were separated. Sometimes kids would be taken away from their parents would be taken off, and kids would be, the family members would be witnessing that, especially the kids. There was a lot of trauma in that, and this was an effort to try and uproot the illegal overstays of what they called. And not only that, there was a lot of, so what was happening as well was on the streets, they were stopping people that looked like Pacific Islanders, and I think even Maori people were stopped sometimes, because if they were doubted to be a Pacific Islander, and the identification was asked like you had to prove your identification. They checked to see if you are legally staying in New Zealand or were you an overstayer. So there's like, you know, random car checks and spot checks and just stopping people walking on the street and that sort of thing. So there was a lot of trauma during this period. There was a lot of force that we used during the Dawn Race. There was a lot of, you know, unkindness towards them. And the Pacific Islanders, some who were overstayers, they did try to help. They would have escape plans, and so there'll be, I think within the community, they would have their own secret modes of communication. Like if immigration were about to come knocking on the door and someone got wind of it, there'll be, for example, like a message of like, the phone will ring 3 times and stop. So that will be the message where, yeah, immigration's on their way. We need to get out. And most of them had secret plans. They had exit plans for when immigration, whenever they would come, they would have their exit plans of how to get out of there. So there was a lot of things happening, and it didn't just stop in the 1970s though. I think it's assumed that the Dawn Raids just happened in the 1970s, but was happening in the 1980s as well, is that immigration would randomly do spot checks in schools and organizations and stuff to try and catch these overstayers. But then again, there was a lot of effort and unity in how they tried to protect themselves, because they did not want to give up the fight. And so there was this group of young activists as well, called the Polynesian Panthers, and they were fighting against racism because it was very obvious that there was racial profiling and there's racial targeting. It was just targeted at the Pacific Islanders, and there were these Polynesian Panthers, as they called themselves. They fought against this, but not just that. They had to also fight against perception that they were a gang and with the negative connotation. And yeah, this went on for quite a while, and it got worse until, but because there was also a lot of pushback. There was also a lot of pushback, a lot of voice, a lot of noise to, you know, try and stop this and push back, and immigration were forced to change their policies. I think upon, like, you know, just thinking about it, I think there has been, despite where, you know, not dismissing what's happened, you know, not minimizing what's happened, I think there's been some positive outcomes as well that's come out of this, is that the newer generations forward they're all about social justice. They're all about promoting change, trying to eradicate racism. And this is we still see this in our current generations, where they're still trying to do the work that their ancestors had started out. They're still trying to eradicate racism. They're still trying to make their voice heard. They're still trying to educate, to liberate. They're trying to get the stories heard. They're trying to share of what's happened. And I think that New Zealand shouldn't be ashamed that the Dawn Raids happened, because it is a part of history. And Pacific Islanders as well shouldn't be ashamed that this has happened, because it is part of history. But I guess, you know, just to acknowledge that this has happened, but then also what's the positive outcomes out of it, is that they've been able to you know, continue the fight to practice and promote social justice, which has been massive, and also to keep healing from the trauma that your ancestors had started out. So to keep healing, and to keep healing for the future generations, to keep the fight going. I believe in the term educate to liberate, and I think that's one positive outcome that I would say that's come out of this, is that even in today's generation, even the plays, even in that play Through Our Father's Eyes that I watched, in my last video, that is what that told me, that even today's kids, even today's youth in current times are still fighting to educate around New Zealand's history, to try and, you know, to give respect to their ancestors, to not waste the efforts of their ancestors and to continue the fight for equality, to eradicate racism. And yeah, so I hope I have given you a better overview about the dawn raids, and I apologize in advance if any of you watching this are Pacific Islanders and I have maybe made a couple of mistakes here and there. Please do make a comment in the section as well, let me know, and I'm always wanting to learn and improve, and I definitely think that for me this is a very important, well, it's a sensitive topic to talk about, and you know, and just watching the brutality of the dawn raids, this always gets me very sensitive. So I just want to say, hey, you know, great fight, great efforts generations after that, and there is always going to be transgenerational trauma, but the healing can also happen while we're not in charge of what's happened in the past, what trauma has been done to us and to our ancestors. We are in charge of how we heal and whether we do want to heal. So that is in our hands, and if we keep taking charge of that and trying to heal, we're also creating better futures for generations moving forward. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I definitely did enjoy talking about it. I get really passionate when I talk about such topics, and I hope to bring you more of such. But I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I did. And if you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel, like, share, subscribe, and I hope to see you very soon in my next video. Wherever you are, I hope you're keeping safe and warm. It has been shitty weather in New Zealand, well, in Christchurch specifically. I'm not sure about the North Island, but in the South Island the winters have been quite brutal to us, so please keep warm, stay safe wherever you are, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.